She found a wounded cowboy in the woods and nursed him back unaware he was a millionaire. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to our main character. It was a quiet afternoon when Sarah decided to take a walk in the woods near her home. The trees swayed gently in the breeze, and the scent of pine filled the air. She had always found peace here, away from the noise and chaos of everyday life. But today, something was different. As she wandered deeper into the woods, she stumbled upon a man lying motionless on the ground. His body was battered, covered in dirt and bruises. His clothes were torn, and blood stained his shirt. Sarah's heart raced as she rushed over to him, checking for a pulse. He was alive, but barely. Panic surged through her as she quickly looked around, realizing there was no one else around. She had to help him. Carefully, she pulled him into a sitting position, propping him against a nearby tree. She could feel his warmth fading, and the weight of the situation settled in. She didn't have much experience with first aid, but she knew enough to bandage his wounds and try to stop the bleeding. Her hands were shaking as she worked, but her focus never wavered. She had no idea who this man was, but she couldn't leave him here to die. After what felt like an eternity, she managed to stabilize him enough to help him back to her house. She carefully supported him as they walked, her arm around his waist, her thoughts racing. Who was he? What had happened to him? Was he in trouble? As they reached her front door, she helped him inside, laid him on the couch, and began tending to his wounds. Despite her initial shock, she knew she had to stay calm. He was depending on her. For the next few hours, she worked tirelessly to clean and bandage his cuts, making sure he was as comfortable as possible. But as the night wore on, something strange began to happen. As she worked, she started to notice things about him that didn't quite add up. His hands were rough, like someone who had spent years working outdoors, but there was a certain grace to his movements when he adjusted his position, and his face, though battered, held a certain rugged charm. He didn't look like your typical stranger. Something about him felt familiar, though she couldn't put her finger on it. Finally, after what felt like hours of silence, he stirred. His eyes fluttered open, and he looked up at her, confusion written all over his face. Where am I?" he muttered, his voice gravelly. Sarah froze for a moment, unsure of how to answer. She didn't know anything about him. "You're safe," she said softly, offering him a reassuring smile. "I found you in the woods. You were hurt." He blinked at her, his gaze flickering over her face. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice hoarse. Sarah nodded, her heart pounding in her chest. She had no idea who this man was, but something about him felt important. As the night wore on, they exchanged a few more words, though it was mostly Sarah talking. She felt a strange connection to him, as though this encounter had been fated in some way. But she still had no idea who he was. Was he just another lost soul in the world? Or was there something more to his story? Little did she know, the man she had just helped would soon reveal a truth that would change her life forever. The next morning, Sarah woke up to the soft sunlight filtering through the curtains, casting warm beams of light across the room. She stretched and yawned, the events of the previous day still fresh in her mind. She had helped a man in the woods, someone who had been badly hurt. But as she glanced over at the couch where he had been lying, she realized something strange. He was gone. Her heart skipped a beat as panic set in. Had he left in the middle of the night? Did he wake up and decide to leave without telling her? She rushed to the kitchen, hoping to find him there, but he wasn't. Her mind raced with worry. What if he was still out there somewhere, weak and unable to defend himself? She had to find him. Just as she grabbed her coat to head out the door, she heard a soft knock on the door. Sarah hesitated for a moment, unsure of who it could be. She opened it to find the man from the woods standing there, looking healthier than she had ever seen him. His hair was combed, his clothes were clean, and he stood tall, though still with a slight limp. He gave her a small smile, and for the first time, Sarah saw the hint of warmth in his eyes. "I didn't mean to scare you," he said, his voice much clearer now. "I just needed to clear my head." Sarah blinked, still trying to process what she was seeing. The man who had been on death's door the night before was now standing before her, looking perfectly fine. She let out a sigh of relief, her shoulders relaxing as the tension drained from her body. "You look much better," she said, her voice soft. "I'm glad you're feeling better. But I was worried when I woke up and didn't see you." He nodded, his expression serious. "I understand. I just needed a moment to gather myself. Thank you for everything you did for me. I'll never be able to repay you." Sarah raised an eyebrow at that. "Repay me? I didn't do anything but help you out. You don't need to repay me." But the man shook his head. "You don't understand. You saved my life. I owe you more than just my thanks." He paused for a moment, as though trying to find the right words. "My name is Jacob Carter. I'm not just a guy in the woods. I'm a CEO. I run Carter Enterprises." Sarah's heart raced as she processed what he had just said. A CEO? The man she had helped was a CEO? She blinked in disbelief, trying to wrap her mind around the words. "A CEO?" she repeated, her voice barely above a whisper. Jacob nodded. "Yes. I know this must be a lot to take in, but I didn't want you to think I was just some random guy. I wanted to thank you properly, and I want to offer you something in return for everything you did for me." Sarah shook her head, still in shock. I don't understand. I thought you were just a man who needed help. I didn't know who you were. I didn't care who you were. I just wanted to make sure you were okay." Jacob's expression softened. "That's what makes you different. You didn't care about who I was or what I could offer you. You just helped me because you're kind-hearted." Sarah felt a warmth spread through her chest at his words. She hadn't done anything extraordinary. She had just acted out of compassion. But hearing him say it made her feel like her actions mattered. "I don't know what to say," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "You don't have to say anything," Jacob said gently. "But I'd like to offer you something. I can provide you with a job at Carter Enterprises, a position that I think you'd be perfect for, and I can help you with whatever you need. You've shown me kindness when I needed it most. Now let me return the favor." Sarah stared at him, stunned. A job? At Carter Enterprises? The offer was so unexpected that it left her speechless. She had always struggled to find work, always felt like she was just getting by. But now, this stranger, this billionaire CEO, was offering her a chance to change her life. I don't know what to say," she said again, her mind spinning. "You don't have to decide right now," Jacob said with a smile. "Take some time to think about it, but whatever you choose, I want you to know that I'm grateful. You've changed my life." With that, he turned to leave, but before he stepped away, he paused and looked back at her. "I'll be in touch, and thank you again, Sarah. You're the kind of person the world needs more of." And with that, he was gone. Sarah stood there, staring after him, her heart still racing. She had just met a man who had more money and power than she could ever imagine, but it was his kindness that had left the greatest impression on her. And now, as she stood in her quiet home, she wondered just what kind of change this encounter would bring to her life. The next few days passed in a blur for Sarah. She found herself thinking about Jacob constantly, replaying the conversation in her mind over and over again. Could this really be happening? A job offer from a CEO? A man who had been a complete stranger just days ago, now offering her a chance to change her life? It felt surreal, like something out of a dream. But she couldn't deny the sincerity in his eyes, the kindness he had shown her. Every time she tried to convince herself that she should forget about it, that it was too good to be true, she remembered the look on his face when he thanked her for saving his life. It was the look of someone who didn't take kindness for granted, someone who recognized real goodness when he saw it. After a few days of weighing the offer in her mind, Sarah made up her mind. She couldn't let this opportunity slip away. But she had no idea what to expect when she arrived at Carter Enterprises for her first meeting with Jacob. The office building was a towering glass structure in the heart of the city, a far cry from the quiet, humble life she was used to. She felt small as she stood in front of the massive building, the doorman greeting her as she entered. The lobby was even more impressive: polished marble floors, high ceilings, and artwork that looked like it belonged in a museum. Sarah felt completely out of place. She had spent most of her life in small apartments and rented rooms. But here, everything felt like it was part of another world entirely. Her nerves kicked in as she waited for Jacob in a sleek, modern conference room. But when he finally walked in, all of her anxiety seemed to melt away. He greeted her with a warm smile, as if he hadn't just offered her a job that could change her life. "Sarah, I'm glad you could make it," he said, his voice calm and reassuring. "I know this is a big change, but I want you to feel comfortable here. This is just the first step in a long journey, and I'm here to help you every step of the way." Sarah smiled nervously, unsure of how to respond. She had never been in a place like this before, and the thought of working in a company like Carter Enterprises made her feel like a fish out of water. But Jacob's presence was reassuring. He didn't make her feel small. He didn't make her feel out of place. He made her feel like she belonged. Over the next few weeks, Sarah found herself adapting to the fast-paced world of Carter Enterprises. She was surprised at how quickly she picked things up, how eager she was to learn. Jacob was always there, offering guidance and support when she needed it, but he also gave her the space to prove herself. He treated her like an equal, something she had never experienced before. At work, she found herself making real progress. Her colleagues were friendly and welcoming, and she felt like she was contributing to something bigger than herself. There were days when she still had moments of doubt, when she questioned whether she truly belonged in this world. But Jacob was always there, reminding her of her worth. As she spent more time with him, Sarah started to notice the little things that made him different. He was kind, yes, but he was also incredibly driven. He worked long hours, focused on the success of the company, but he never lost sight of what mattered most. He cared about people, about helping others, and that was something she admired. One afternoon, as Sarah was leaving the office, she spotted Jacob in the hallway. He looked tired, his usual confident demeanor slightly worn down. She approached him, concerned. "Jacob, are you okay?" she asked softly. He looked up at her and smiled, though it didn't reach his eyes. "I'm fine, just a long day," he replied, his voice tired but warm. "I've got a lot on my plate right now, but I'm managing." Sarah hesitated for a moment, then said, "If you ever need a break or someone to talk to, I'm here." Jacob looked at her, his eyes softening. For the first time, she saw a vulnerability in him that he hadn't shown before. "Thank you, Sarah," he said quietly. "I appreciate it. It's just hard sometimes, you know." Sarah nodded, understanding more than he realized. She had seen her own struggles, the hardships that came with trying to make something of yourself. "I know," she said. "But you don't have to carry it all alone." Jacob seemed to think about her words for a moment before he smiled again. "I'll remember that," he said, his voice sincere. As the days went by, Sarah and Jacob's bond grew stronger. She wasn't sure what the future held, but for the first time in her life, she felt like she was on the right path. She had found a job that she was passionate about, and someone who believed in her when she hadn't believed in herself. But little did she know, the journey ahead would hold more surprises, and it would change her life in ways she never expected. Over the next few months, Sarah continued to thrive at Carter Enterprises. She had become an integral part of the team, handling projects with growing confidence. Jacob's belief in her had opened doors she never thought possible. And every day brought new challenges that she was eager to tackle. Her work ethic and dedication had not gone unnoticed, and she quickly earned the respect of her colleagues. But it wasn't just her career that was growing. Her bond with Jacob was deepening as well. They spent more time together, both inside and outside of work, sharing moments that were surprisingly personal. He had become more than just her boss. He had become someone she trusted, someone she could confide in. They had dinners together after long workdays, often discussing everything from business to life. And in those moments, Sarah felt like she had found a kindred spirit. Jacob was still a mysterious figure in many ways, but his vulnerability had started to shine through. He wasn't just the powerful CEO who ran a huge company. He was a man who had lost his way, someone who was looking for something more meaningful in his life. He had shared bits and pieces of his past with her, how he had worked his way up from nothing, how he had lost loved ones, how the pressure of success weighed heavily on him. And in return, Sarah had opened up about her own struggles, her fears, and her dreams. It was during one of these intimate conversations that Jacob revealed something that caught Sarah completely off guard. "I've been thinking about expanding the company," Jacob said, his eyes fixed on the horizon as they sat on the rooftop of the building, watching the sunset. "But it's not just about business growth anymore. I want to do something that truly makes a difference. I want to build something that helps people, that gives back." Sarah listened intently, surprised by his words. "What do you mean?" she asked softly, intrigued by this side of him she hadn't seen before. Jacob turned to face her, his expression serious but filled with purpose. "I want to create a foundation. Something that focuses on helping communities in need, supporting underprivileged youth, offering education and mentorship. I've been thinking about it for a while now, but I just didn't know where to start. And honestly, I didn't think anyone would understand." Sarah's heart skipped a beat as she processed his words. She had always admired his business acumen, his ability to run one of the most successful companies in the industry. But hearing him talk about making a real impact in the world made her see him in a whole new light. "I think that's an amazing idea," she said, her voice full of conviction. "You have the resources, the influence, and the heart to make a difference. I would love to help you with that." Jacob looked at her, his expression softening. "You would?" he asked, clearly surprised. Sarah smiled warmly, nodding. "Of course. I've seen the difference one person can make in someone's life. Look at us. If it wasn't for you, I wouldn't be here right now. I wouldn't have the career I have. I wouldn't have the opportunities I have. You gave me a chance when no one else did. I want to do the same for others." Jacob's eyes gleamed with appreciation, and for a moment, Sarah could see the depth of his gratitude. "You have no idea how much that means to me," he said, his voice filled with sincerity. "I've been looking for someone who shares my vision, who understands what it means to give back, and I think I've found that person in you." As they sat there together, watching the sun dip below the skyline, Sarah realized something. Her life had changed in ways she never could have imagined. The girl who had once struggled to make ends meet was now sitting next to a billionaire CEO, not just as an employee, but as someone who had a real impact on his life. Jacob's offer had opened up new doors for her, and she was beginning to see the possibility of a future she had never dreamed of. But little did she know, this was only the beginning. The journey ahead would take her and Jacob to places they never expected, and it would test everything they had built together. There were challenges ahead, obstacles that neither of them could foresee. But for the first time in a long time, Sarah felt ready. Ready for the future, ready to make a difference, and ready for the unexpected twists that life had in store. As the months passed, Sarah and Jacob's collaboration on the new foundation grew stronger. They worked tirelessly to bring the vision to life, and the impact it started to have on the community was undeniable. The foundation, which they named Carter Foundation, quickly became a beacon of hope for many, offering scholarships, mentorship programs, and resources for underprivileged youth. Sarah felt a deep sense of fulfillment every day as she watched the foundation grow, knowing that she was playing a pivotal role in something that would leave a lasting legacy. She had gone from being a waitress with dreams of a better life to running a major initiative that was helping others fulfill their own dreams. It was hard to believe how much her life had changed in such a short time, and yet every day felt like a new adventure. But despite the success they were seeing, there was an undeniable tension in the air. Jacob was not the same man she had met in the woods. He had become even more driven, more focused on the foundation and the business. But there were times when Sarah could see that the pressure was starting to take its toll on him. He worked long hours, often staying late at the office or attending meetings late into the night. Sarah noticed the dark circles under his eyes, the subtle exhaustion in his voice. She could see that something was weighing on him, but whenever she tried to ask, he would brush it off, insisting that everything was fine. One evening, after a particularly long day, Jacob invited her to dinner. They sat in a quiet restaurant, the soft hum of conversation filling the air as they enjoyed a meal. It was supposed to be a moment of peace, but Sarah could tell that Jacob wasn't really present. His mind was elsewhere, and it wasn't just about the foundation. "Jacob," she said, her voice gentle, "I know you've been under a lot of stress lately, but I can see something's bothering you. You don't have to carry it all alone." Jacob looked at her, his expression softening for a moment. He opened his mouth to say something but hesitated, his eyes flickering with uncertainty. Finally he spoke, his voice low. "It's not something you can fix," he said quietly. "I've been dealing with some things, personal things, and it's been hard to keep it all together." Sarah's heart went out to him as she listened to the vulnerability in his voice. She had seen him as a strong, capable leader. But in that moment, she realized that he, too, had his own struggles. "You don't have to do everything by yourself, Jacob," she said softly, reaching across the table to take his hand. "I'm here for you, just like you've been here for me. You don't have to carry all the weight of the world on your shoulders." Jacob looked at her, his hand squeezing hers in gratitude. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. It was as though the words they didn't say hung in the air, heavy with unspoken understanding. Finally, Jacob nodded. "I've been so focused on making the foundation a success, on proving to everyone that I'm more than just a businessman, that I've been neglecting what really matters," he admitted. "I've been so afraid of failing, of letting down everyone who's counting on me, that I've lost sight of what's truly important." Sarah's heart ached for him. She had seen the pressure he put on himself, the weight of the world he carried on his shoulders. But in that moment, she knew that they were stronger together. "Jacob," she said softly, "you don't have to prove anything to anyone. You've already done more than most people ever will. And the people who really matter, your friends, your family, the people who believe in you, they don't expect perfection. They just want you to be happy. And that's what matters most." Jacob looked at her, his eyes filled with emotion. For a moment, he seemed to consider her words, as though they were sinking in. Then, with a soft sigh, he finally spoke. "Thank you, Sarah," he said quietly. "You've always known exactly what to say. I don't know what I'd do without you." Sarah smiled, her heart swelling with warmth. She had never expected to have this kind of connection with anyone, let alone someone as powerful and successful as Jacob. But as they sat there together, hand in hand, she realized that it wasn't his wealth or his position that mattered. It was the kindness, the understanding, and the love they shared that was the true foundation of their relationship. In that moment, Sarah knew that they were no longer just business partners. They were a team that could overcome anything together. As they left the restaurant, walking side by side under the streetlights, Sarah felt a sense of peace she hadn't felt in a long time. The road ahead would undoubtedly be full of challenges, but she was no longer afraid. With Jacob by her side, she knew that anything was possible. The following weeks brought a sense of calm to Sarah and Jacob's relationship. They continued to work hard on the Carter Foundation, which was growing at an incredible pace. Their partnership, both in business and in their personal lives, had become stronger than ever. Sarah found herself taking on more responsibilities, learning new skills, and becoming an integral part of the foundation's growth. It was more than she could have ever dreamed of, and with Jacob's support, she felt unstoppable. But as things seemed to fall into place, the pressures that came with success also began to weigh on Jacob once again. The balance between work, the foundation, and his personal life began to shift, and Sarah could see him retreating into himself. His long hours and constant drive to make the foundation a success left little room for relaxation or personal time. Despite all the progress they had made, she could feel the old tension returning, and it worried her. One evening, as they were both in the office late, Sarah noticed how exhausted Jacob looked. His eyes were bloodshot from lack of sleep, and he seemed distant, his thoughts clearly elsewhere. She had grown used to seeing him like this, but tonight, something felt different. She knew that she needed to talk to him before things spiraled further. "Jacob," she said softly, breaking the silence in the room. "We need to talk." He looked up, surprised by the seriousness in her tone. "What's wrong?" he asked, concern flashing across his face. Sarah took a deep breath before continuing, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "I can see that you're pushing yourself too hard. You're not taking care of yourself, and I'm worried about you. I've seen how much this foundation means to you, but you're not invincible. You need to take a step back and rest. I want to help you, but I can't do that if you don't let me in." Jacob's face softened, and for a moment it seemed like he was going to argue, but then he sighed deeply, dropping his shoulders in resignation. "I know," he admitted quietly. "I've been burying myself in work because it's the only way I know how to cope. But I'm tired, Sarah. I'm really tired." His words hit Sarah harder than she expected. And for a moment, she simply looked at him, her heart aching. This wasn't the man she had come to know, the confident, driven CEO who seemed to have everything under control. This was a man who had been carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders for far too long. "Jacob, you don't have to carry everything alone," she said gently, standing up and walking over to him. She placed a hand on his shoulder, offering him the comfort he had been so reluctant to seek. "You have me. You have a team. You don't have to do it all yourself. Let us help you." Jacob met her gaze, his eyes filled with gratitude and vulnerability. "I don't know what I would do without you, Sarah," he whispered. "I don't think I ever realized how much I needed someone like you until now. I've been so focused on everything else that I forgot what really matters." Sarah smiled softly, brushing a stray lock of hair from his face. "You matter, Jacob. You always have. And you don't have to prove anything to anyone. Let's take this one step at a time, together." They stood there in silence for a moment, the weight of the conversation lingering in the air. It was as if the walls they had built around themselves were finally coming down, and for the first time, they could both breathe. The rest of the evening passed in a more peaceful silence as they finished up the work they had left to do, but the mood had shifted. They weren't just colleagues anymore, they were partners in every sense of the word, both in business and in life. Jacob finally agreed to take a short break, something Sarah had been encouraging him to do for weeks. They planned a weekend getaway to a quiet cabin by the lake, where they could relax and recharge. It was exactly what they both needed, a break from the chaos of their lives. The weekend turned out to be everything they hoped for. They spent their time talking, laughing, and simply enjoying each other's company. There were no deadlines, no meetings, no expectations, just the two of them in a peaceful, serene setting. It was a reminder of the importance of taking a step back and finding balance. As they sat by the lake, watching the sun set over the water, Sarah turned to Jacob with a smile. "This is exactly what we needed," she said softly. Jacob nodded, his expression more relaxed than she had seen in months. "You were right," he admitted. "I've been running myself into the ground. But this is perfect." Sarah leaned her head on his shoulder, content in the moment. She knew that there would be more challenges ahead, more obstacles to face, but for the first time in a long time, she felt at peace. They were on this journey together, and no matter what happened, they would face it side by side. Oh, the weekend away at the cabin had been everything Sarah and Jacob needed. It had allowed them to reset and reconnect with each other in a way they hadn't been able to do in months. But as the days passed and they returned to the reality of their busy lives, the pressures of running the foundation and the company soon began to creep back in. Jacob was determined to keep moving forward with their mission, and Sarah was right there beside him, offering her full support. But there were still moments when Sarah noticed the weariness in his eyes, the quiet moments of doubt that he tried to hide from her. It was clear that Jacob wasn't fully at peace yet, but he was trying. Sarah knew that the road ahead would still be filled with challenges, but she believed in him, believed in them both. As the months went by, the foundation continued to grow, and more lives were touched by their work. The scholarships, the mentorship programs, the youth outreach, all of it was making a difference. And Sarah couldn't help but feel proud of the impact they were having. However, with the success of the foundation came new responsibilities. Jacob's time became more limited, as he was constantly traveling for meetings, attending conferences, and managing the complexities of his business empire. At first, Sarah had enjoyed the independence that came with managing the day-to-day operations of the foundation on her own. But as time went on, she realized how much she missed having Jacob by her side. It wasn't just the work. It was his presence that she missed, the way he would listen to her ideas, the way he would challenge her to be better. She felt the distance growing between them, and it was starting to weigh on her. One evening, after a particularly long day at the office, Sarah sat in her apartment, staring out the window. The city lights sparkled below, but all she could think about was how disconnected she felt from Jacob. He had been distant lately, lost in his own world, and she wasn't sure how to bridge the gap that was forming between them. Her thoughts were interrupted by the sound of her phone ringing. She glanced at the screen and saw Jacob's name. She hesitated for a moment before answering, unsure of what to expect. "Hey," she said softly, trying to keep her voice steady. "Hey, Sarah," Jacob replied, his voice warm but tired. "I've been thinking about you a lot lately. I know things have been a little crazy, and I want to apologize for not being there as much as I should be. I've just been so focused on everything, and I don't want you to feel neglected." Sarah felt a wave of relief wash over her, and she smiled, even though he couldn't see it. "I understand, Jacob," she said, her voice gentle. "I know how important the foundation and the business are to you, but I miss you. I miss us. I miss the way we used to spend time together, the way we would talk about everything and nothing. I feel like we've lost that somewhere along the way." There was a long pause on the other end of the line, and Sarah wondered if he would understand. But when Jacob spoke again, his voice was filled with sincerity. "I miss you too, Sarah," he said quietly. "I've been so focused on making sure everything works, making sure the foundation succeeds, but I've been neglecting the most important thing, my relationship with you. I'm sorry." Sarah's heart softened, and she felt a sense of hope rise within her. "You don't have to apologize," she said. "I know how hard you've been working, but we can't lose sight of each other in the process. We have to find a balance, Jacob. We have to make time for each other, even when everything feels overwhelming." Jacob sighed deeply, as if a weight had been lifted off his shoulders. "You're right," he said, his voice filled with emotion. "I've been afraid of failing, of letting everyone down, but I never stopped to think about what really matters. I don't want to lose you, Sarah. You're the most important part of this journey." Sarah felt a tear slip down her cheek, touched by his words. She had always known how much Jacob cared, but hearing him say it out loud made her realize just how much they meant to each other. "I'm not going anywhere, Jacob," she whispered. "We'll face this together, every step of the way. We just need to make time for each other. We can't let everything else take precedence over our relationship." Jacob's voice was softer now, filled with warmth and resolve. "I promise, Sarah, I'll do better. I'll make sure we don't lose sight of what really matters." And for the first time in a long time, Sarah felt a sense of peace. They weren't perfect, but they were committed to making it work. With the foundation growing stronger every day, and with their relationship solidifying once more, they both knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. The road ahead wouldn't always be easy, but they were ready for whatever came next. They had each other, and that was all that truly mattered. As the months went by, Sarah and Jacob worked harder than ever to make the Carter Foundation a success. They had found their rhythm, balancing their personal relationship with the demands of their work. Sarah's role in the foundation had expanded, and she was now overseeing several key initiatives, from scholarship programs to community outreach. Jacob, too, had embraced his leadership role in the foundation, but he had learned to prioritize his time and make more room for Sarah and their shared life. Their relationship had never been stronger, and with each passing day, they built something even more meaningful both professionally and personally. Despite their newfound balance, life had a way of throwing curveballs. One afternoon, Sarah received a phone call that would change everything. It was from her mother, and her voice was laced with worry. "Sarah," she said, "your father is sick. He's in the hospital, and the doctors say it's serious. They don't know what's going to happen." Sarah's heart dropped into her stomach as the words hit her. Her father had been in poor health for some time, but she never expected it to escalate so quickly. She tried to stay calm, but fear and panic flooded her. "I'm coming home," she said, barely able to keep her voice steady. "I'll be there as soon as I can." The drive home felt like a blur. She barely registered the passing scenery, as her thoughts were consumed with her father's condition. She hadn't seen him in months, and the thought of losing him was unbearable. When she arrived at the hospital, she was greeted by her mother, who looked exhausted and pale. Sarah rushed to her side, and together, they went to her father's room. He was lying in a bed, hooked up to machines, his face pale and drawn. He barely seemed like the man she remembered, the man who had always been so strong, so full of life. Her heart ached as she sat by his bedside, holding his hand and trying to offer him the comfort he had always given her. Over the next few days, Sarah stayed at the hospital, supporting her mother and trying to process the overwhelming emotions that flooded her. She found herself torn between her responsibilities at the foundation and her desire to be with her family. She missed Jacob terribly, but she couldn't bring herself to call him. She didn't want to worry him unnecessarily, and she felt like she needed to handle this on her own. But as the days passed, Jacob's concern for her grew. He knew something was wrong. He could hear it in her voice the last time they spoke, and he could feel the distance between them. One evening, when Sarah had just returned from the hospital, she was surprised to see Jacob standing at the door of her apartment. He had driven out to be with her, despite her insistence that she didn't need him there. "Sarah," he said softly, his voice filled with concern. "I'm here for you. Whatever you need, whatever you're going through, we'll face it together." Sarah looked at him, her eyes filled with emotion. She had been so focused on being strong for her family that she hadn't realized how much she needed him. The weight of everything was starting to crush her, and she realized she couldn't do it alone. "I don't know what to do, Jacob," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I don't know how to be everything for everyone." Jacob stepped forward, wrapping his arms around her in a gentle embrace. "You don't have to be everything for everyone," he said softly. "You just need to be yourself. And I'll be here, every step of the way, supporting you." Sarah closed her eyes, allowing herself to lean into his warmth, grateful for his presence. It was in this moment that she realized just how much Jacob had become a constant source of strength in her life. They had been through so much together, and now, more than ever, she knew they were a team. As the days passed, Sarah's father's condition improved, but it was a slow process. She spent more time at the hospital, and Jacob continued to support her, even if it meant sacrificing his own time and commitments. He understood the importance of being there for her, and he never once complained. When her father was finally stable enough to be discharged, Sarah felt an overwhelming sense of relief. It had been an emotional roller coaster, but through it all, Jacob had been her anchor, offering his love and unwavering support. As they drove home from the hospital together, Sarah felt a deep sense of gratitude for everything they had overcome. She looked over at Jacob, who was driving with a quiet determination, and realized just how lucky she was. The road ahead would always be filled with challenges. Life was unpredictable. After all, but with Jacob by her side, she knew she could face anything. "Thank you," she said quietly, her voice filled with emotion. "Thank you for being here with me. I don't know what I would have done without you." Jacob reached over, taking her hand in his, giving it a reassuring squeeze. "You don't have to thank me," he said with a smile. "We're in this together, always." And in that moment, Sarah knew that no matter what came next, they were stronger than ever. The foundation they had built together was not just about the work they did. It was about the love and trust they shared. They had faced adversity, and now they were ready for whatever the future held. As Sarah and Jacob continued their journey together, the challenges they had faced only strengthened their bond. Their love had been tested in ways they never could have predicted, but with each trial, they had emerged stronger, more connected, and more determined than ever. With the Carter Foundation growing rapidly and helping more people than they had ever imagined, their shared mission was becoming a defining part of their lives. But now, the focus was on something more personal, something that had been slowly taking shape in the quiet moments between them. One evening, as they sat together in the cozy living room of their apartment, Jacob took Sarah's hand in his. She could see the sincerity in his eyes, the same eyes that had been a source of strength and comfort for her during the toughest moments of her life. "Sarah," Jacob began, his voice soft but filled with emotion. "There's something I've been thinking about for a while now. I've spent so much of my life focused on business, on making sure the foundation was successful, that I never stopped to think about what truly matters. And the truth is, what matters most to me is you. You've been my rock, my support, my partner through everything, and I can't imagine my life without you in it." Sarah's heart skipped a beat as she listened to him speak. She had known that their relationship was special, but hearing him express it so openly, with such depth, left her speechless. Jacob continued, "I don't want to waste any more time. I want to spend the rest of my life with you, building something even greater than we've already created together. I want to be with you, not just in the good times, but in every moment, every challenge, every triumph. I want to marry you, Sarah." Sarah's breath caught in her throat. Her mind raced, unsure if she had heard him correctly. Was this really happening? Was Jacob, the man who had been through so much, asking her to spend forever with him? "Jacob," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Are you sure? I mean, we've been through so much already, and our lives have changed so much. I never imagined." Jacob gently placed a finger on her lips, silencing her. "I've never been more sure of anything in my life, Sarah. You're everything I've ever wanted. You've changed my world. and I want to spend the rest of my life making you as happy as you've made me." The words hung in the air between them, filled with a promise that felt bigger than both of them. Sarah's heart swelled with emotion, and before she could say anything more, Jacob reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. As he opened it, Sarah's breath caught in her throat once again. Inside was the most beautiful ring she had ever seen, simple yet elegant, with a sparkling diamond at its center. "Will you marry me, Sarah?" Jacob asked, his voice filled with love and hope. Sarah felt the tears welling up in her eyes as she looked at him, her heart overflowing with love. She had never imagined this moment, but now that it was here, she knew there was no one else she would rather spend her life with. "Yes," she whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. "Yes, Jacob, I will marry you." Jacob's face broke into a radiant smile, and he slipped the ring onto her finger, sealing the promise they had just made. As they held each other close, Sarah felt a sense of peace she had never known before. Their journey together had been filled with challenges, but it had also been filled with love, growth, and unshakable support. And now, as they prepared to embark on the next chapter of their lives, Sarah knew that no matter what came their way, they would face it together. The foundation of their love was strong, and nothing could break it. As Jacob kissed her forehead softly, Sarah realized that this was just the beginning. Their love story wasn't over, it was just starting, and the future was filled with endless possibilities. Together, they could conquer anything, and they would do so hand in hand, forever. In this touching and heartwarming story, follow the journey of Sarah, a woman who goes from struggling to make ends meet to working alongside a millionaire CEO, Jacob. Their bond grows as they face life's challenges together, from personal struggles to the creation of a charitable foundation that changes the lives of many. As the story unfolds, Sarah and Jacob's relationship deepens, revealing the importance of love, support, and perseverance in the face of adversity. This is one of those unforgettable millionaire stories that reminds us that true love transcends wealth and status, and that the kindness we show others can lead to life-changing opportunities. Jacob, despite his success and wealth, finds his heart and soul transformed by Sarah's unwavering kindness and compassion, which leads to a love story that is both inspirational and empowering. If you're a fan of millionaire stories that focus not just on financial success, but on personal growth, love, and the human connections that matter most, this is a story you won't want to miss. Through their trials and triumphs, Sarah and Jacob prove that the greatest wealth is not in money, but in the relationships we build, making this a truly powerful addition to the world of millionaire stories. Join Sarah and Jacob as they navigate life, love, and success in one of the most touching millionaire stories you'll ever hear. With their support for each other, their love blossoms, creating an inspiring tale of transformation, heartache, and joy that will stay with you long after the story ends. If you're looking for millionaire stories that inspire hope and showcase the power of genuine connections, this one will surely resonate with you.